What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. And before I introduce these two cats, Fran and Ryan, I'm going to first tell everybody where they can hear the podcast. You can hear it anywhere pretty much. iTunes, Stitcher, Apple, Google, wherever you hear a podcast, you can find Two Dates and a Dash. All I ask is that you subscribe and hit the automatic download button. That just helps with my analytics and gets my SEO up on Google and all that kind of stuff. So I highly would appreciate that. Where can you learn more about me? Pretty easy. myname.com, mattcubbler.com. You can find out about my backstory. You can hear more about the things I'm doing as far as a speaker. You can get a copy of A Brother's Love, a Memoir, which is the book I wrote about my life growing up with my brother Andy, who was autistic and had a severe stutter and unfortunately died in a car accident in 1989. But it's a great book. I think it's gotten, it's been around for 14 years, still selling today and still impacting lives. And that's one thing I'm very, very proud of. All right, without further ado, two of my good buddies, known them forever, Ryan Greiser, Fran Walsh. How are you? Doing good, boys?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you having us on. Looking forward to having a good conversation.
What's up, Franny?
Absolutely, man. We're excited to be on. Obviously, been following your podcast for a while, so excited to have a time today.
All right, little backstory. So Rye and Fran I've known both of them through originally the Maxwell Football Club. And if you recall, the last episode I had Colin Thompson on, the tight end for the Carolina Panthers, who I also knew through the Maxwell Football Club. And it's kind of a really cool organization where I get to meet a lot of cool people. I was the head of security, bodyguarding, became Tim Tebow's bodyguard through that, and a lot of things that the Maxwell Football Club does in the community as an organization, but also internally as far as bringing good people together and keeping them together. And that's kind of how this all started. Ryan won the Jim Henry Award, which is the High School Player of the Year, and my company Max Out is the sponsor of that award. And then Ryan went to college and at Liberty University, was a fantastic college athlete, and then came back and played a little bit of arena ball and then came to work for me. And then I would say I launched his career, and because he realized that he couldn't stay a strength coach working at some small gym in Royersford for the rest of his life. I gave him the tools. I'm going to do a step further. It's like Enterprise Rent a Car. They give you the tools to be successful. No, but that's my story with Ryan. I've just we've been very close ever since. And Fran, also Maxwell Football Club, also a fantastic high school at Archbishop Wood, and then college at Villanova, played football both. Both their moms super instrumental in their lives and part of the Maxwell Football Club family as well. And they're always volunteering and doing stuff. So it's a really close-knit group, and I'm really thankful to know both of you. And I'm excited to share your stories individually and then collectively what you're doing together with your Opulus financial services and everything you're doing with that and helping people manage their funds. And I don't have any, but when I do, you guys got it. I have a problem of doing everything for free. That's my vice is I can't ask for money for anything. And my wife kind of thinks it's asinine to constantly be doing everything for free, but that's just my own cross to bear. But all right, so you guys have seen the show. I asked one question. Yep. I asked it to everybody. I'm going to ask individually for Rye first, and then to Fran. Who is Ryan Greiser?
Yeah. And Matt, before I answer that, I can confirm that you were officially my launching pad, right? So I'm foreverly indebted to you and all my future success, right? That comes here, right?
I'm not afraid to ask you for money, Rye. If you could just put that dollar sign, I'd be good.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, man, it's a loaded question, right? It depends on what phase of life you're talking about. But today, I am a father of two awesome boys, Hudson and Parker. I got a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old now that are keeping me busy. For sure, I'm a husband to my beautiful wife, Jessica. We've been married for just 5 years now, kind of coming up on another anniversary here soon. So And then, I'm a co-founder of Opulus with Fran, and trying to bring financial awareness and education to individuals so they can align their money and their wealth with their goals.
Love it. Fran, same to you. Who is Fran Walsh?
Yeah, 25 years old, from Warrenton, Pennsylvania. I live out in, Balkid, Manioc now. Co-founder of Opulus, fitness enthusiast, and I guess beloved Eagles fan. So I guess that's how I would describe myself in a nutshell.
I remember, so there's certain things that I'm going to be 50 in 2 months, and I'm cool with that. Like I'm happy to be 50. Like, I'd be honest with you, I never thought I'd make it. So there's certain things that you go, oh shit, who would ever thought I'd be here? But there's certain things I can't pull off, and one of them is like the very form-fitting athletic cut suit that both of you seem to like to fashion whenever we're together in a suit environment, and then also loafers without socks. I can't wear shoes without socks. I just got this thing. Even like Chuck Taylor's, I have to wear socks with everything. So there's certain things that a guy that's 50 can't pull off today in 2021, which I call it actually, like, I don't know if you had all the dates up, but it's like December 98th, I think, 2020. I don't think we're actually in 2021 yet. I just keep adding days on to December. But there's just certain things that a 50-year-old guy can't pull off. And those are two things: close fit suits, tightly athletic fitted suits, and loafers without socks. But you two kill it. I'll just say that.
And just to clarify, right, I do wear socks with my loafers. They're just no-show socks, so you don't get the shoes stinky, right? That's one thing. And the second thing is, you got to have a good tailored fitting suit. Just, get some materials a little stretchy, so it can hug you the right way.
And you say that with like a little head, like almost like I'm like, you were feeling yourself there for a second, right?
I was thinking about it. Well, listen, but I haven't worn a suit in like a year, so.
Well, it's good you've been sitting in your house this whole time because of 2020. But Fran was, for people to understand, Fran was a lineman. Like he wasn't, I don't know what you weigh now. You look like about 195, 205, somewhere around there, based on just your elbows up that I can see on the screen. But he wasn't necessarily a skinny jeans kid or a college athlete. Now all of a sudden you're like Mr. Athletic, fit, ripped, got steel on your shirt.
Appreciate it. I actually, it's a funny joke that all my friends always like to say they miss Fat Fran. The most I ever weighed, I was 271 pounds at one point in college, and it was not good. It was like personal pizzas, Ben and Jerry's ice cream. It was not a clean 271, but I'm like 190, like 197 now. But it's funny as you make the joke about like the skinny jeans. My uncles are, they're all like your age. They're all around like that 50, and we have like a group chat. And anytime I post a picture, it'll pretty much get immediately thrown in the group chat. And it's saying like, oh, Fran's got another pair of jeggings. Jeggings is what they call them. So I get torn a new one every single time I post a picture on any form of social media.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you go from Fat Fran to Athletic Fran, there's always going to be, I've never been athletic, so I don't have any comparable, right? So nobody's like, I remember when you used to dunk. No, never happened. Remember when you were fast? Nope, never was. Like, I don't have any comparisons. I've always just been this really good at killing things and protecting things. And that's really my only gift. Like, I don't have one thing that is universally the same with everyone else. Like, there's always something everyone's collectively, I can shoot baskets or I can do this. I don't have any of those things that I'm really good at anything. I'm always good enough to be on the court or on the field, just not ever really do anything. Like when I was in high school, they called me Five when I was on the basketball team for a very short period of time, because I would go in for 5 minutes, get 5 fouls and 5 rebounds, and then I'd be out. Like that was all I would do. Towards the end of the game, they're like, get all your fouls and hack the crap out of that guy. Make sure he knows you were there. Throw an elbow or two that maybe you shouldn't have. Like you'll get called on a foul for a rebound, and you're clearing out with your elbows. I was good at that, and I knew I had a 5-minute window to get that shit done. So I didn't waste any time. So I just never had a great athletic skill set that I could be compared to at 50. And you guys, luckily, you've got Ryan, you're what, 28? How old are you now? 32.
wish.
What are you?
34.
34. I don't know. It's been forever. I remember since high school. So it all starts when you're 50.
No,
It's
yeah,
like dog years.
all kind
right?
of blends.
It all condenses.
Yeah. God, I wish I was 28.
Just imagine the things that you could do when you were 28 that you can't now at 34. You guys both have great stories that when you are 50, like I've lived an exciting life. My exciting life is all generated through doing crazy, stupid shit with like guns and bad guys. Like it's not, I don't have a folklore about me other than I was a hoodlum in high school and a double agent, at one point in time wanting to become a cop while also being a marijuana salesman. So like I had a little side forgery business with, hall passes that I would sell for $2 a piece and get pulled out of class to sign hall passes for people. I had a term paper writing business where I would, it's 100 for an A, 75 for a B, 50 for a C. And I could call the grade. I knew how to write an A paper and people would pay me for them. So I had all kinds of little things going on, but none of which are any of the, like my kids come, thank God my dad told that story about being a hall pass salesman. Like that never happens. There's no folklore where I can sit down and have that conversation and be proud. Like you guys, when you sit down and when you're driving, your kids get older and Fran, when you finally decide you want to, settle down and be a grown up and do all the things that your idol Ryan is doing, they'll ask questions like, Dad, what's that on the wall? That picture of you looking all rugged and athletic. What'd you do there? And there's a story behind that. So since now we know who Ryan Greiser and who Fran is, and I asked that question just so you know, because I don't like what I think of you, both of you individually, is not always going to be what you think of yourself in the moment when I ask that question. So I have a vision of Ryan and a vision of Fran of who you are as people, and what I might say may not be what you are thinking at that very moment. And as a cop, when I'm interviewing a suspect or somebody who's a victim, in order to get them to really start to dial in, you got to start broad. You got to get their brain to go outside and start to think of like things they weren't thinking about. And then all of a sudden that opens up their brain so you can start to really dial them in. So that's why I asked that question the way that I do. So, Ryan, let's talk about, because I think you guys are starting a podcast. You're in the financial services world, especially in the financial services side. Trust is literally everything.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to trust you with their money, especially in a world that we're in today, where there's so much uneasiness in trusting anybody who isn't in someone's inner circle. Let's talk about your growing up and your upbringing and who you are as a person, because your mom's an amazing woman, and her perseverance and struggle and strength is something I'm sure that has influenced your guidance in life. Let's talk about you a little bit and figure out who Ryan Greiser is, the person in a more global, macro kind of way. Let's talk about your upbringing, where you grew up, your family structure, things like that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Bucks County, specifically in the upper Bucks County area in Sellersville. And, growing up, it was fun, right? Living up that way and in that area. And just from a very young age, I really just poured myself into sports, right? I loved to compete. I loved getting out there and trying to figure out how I could excel and be better, right? For everything that I did. And that was baseball, that was basketball, that was football. What I really, really loved growing up, right? And I think that those team sports and the camaraderie that the team sports built around really, forged me as a person to be the best that I could be, right? And as I look back on it, the relationships that I built, the things that I learned, and now as I'm raising my own kids, it's really interesting to take a step back and see, how they can be molded, not just by me, but by community. Right. So, I had a very supportive mom, as you mentioned, some of the struggles that she's had with MS, a very supportive family, a dad that always really wanted me to excel in athletics as well. And that really made me the person that I was, but not just that, but the coaches that I had right along the way that, taught me to have attention to detail at an almost like ridiculous amount. And in my business now, I think I drive Franny nuts sometimes because I'm so detail oriented with stuff, right? Around some things, and can get lost in that somehow. So everything's gonna be just right and just perfect for things, which can be great and also be a hindrance sometimes. But ultimately, as I was growing up, those are the things that I look back on that really forged me as a person, is teamwork, competition, and excellence to perform at the highest level.
I love, because I got a really good question I'm going to tee up as soon as I hear Fran talk, but because it's going to be for both of you, because I think it's, when you think about a partnership, because me and Jason are partners, and we had our backstory, people would be like, holy shit, when they think about, if I told the world Jason and mine's backstory and how we became great business partners, great friends, and it didn't start there. But what happened was, from struggle came a decision to both invest in one another personally and emotionally, so that we could save what was falling apart. But with you guys have such a common bond with the Maxwell Football Club and sports, that it was a natural fit. Jason and I were not a natural fit, but we ended up being a natural partnership through the collective understanding of who each other are as both persons and in business. So Fran, let's talk about your backstory a little bit, how you got to where you're at as far as your family structure, sports, and all that kind of stuff, just kind of like what Ryan did.
Sure. So I grew up in Warrenton, Pennsylvania. I was actually born in Delaware, but we moved back to Warrenton when I was like 5 years old. And, growing up, I had a great childhood. I'm one of five siblings. I have three sisters and a brother. I'm number two in that order. Everyone's like 2 years apart. So had a great upbringing. My parents were absolute rock stars. My dad passed away when I was 13 years old. He was an absolute tank. He used to he would either work down in Georgia. So he would drive to Georgia almost every week. He would come back at night. He would drive like 8-hour days, would come back at night. We would get home from school. He would handwrite tests for us. He was a ball buster. He was like, you are going to be awesome at sports. You're going to be awesome in school. So that was kind of where we learned a very disciplined lifestyle. Hey, you're going to be good at everything. But obviously, he passed away. My mom, you guys both know my mom. My mom is probably everyone says this about their mom, but I think my mom might actually be the nicest human that has ever walked the planet. She is the one person I could say puts literally everyone else before herself. So, I had the luckiest upbringing in the world. Obviously, sports were a huge part of it, as far as like Ryan mentioned. Was fortunate enough to be able to go to Wood through a sponsor of Wood that, they help pay for, some kids to go to Wood. So luckily me and my brother both got to go there. Had a great upbringing. Fortunately gave me all the opportunities in the world where I was able to go to Nova and play football. And then, from there, obviously when I was in high school, became part of the Maxwell Football Club. The night I won the award, Ryan told me I would love for you to work for me one day. And then, 3.5 years later, we ended up connecting again, and the rest was history. It was it's kind of a perfect bond to start our relationship as business partners, and kind of took off from there.
I think it's there's several cool things that happen in life, and decisions that are made, whether it's for you or you are part of that decision, whether your upbringing, your parents asked you for your input or not, you got where you are because of their guidance and their parenting style. They're holding you accountable and forcing you to have responsibility and good practices and attention to detail and all those things that a good parent does. And I would argue, maybe it's something you can ask both your moms. When my kids are going to be 23, my daughter's going to be 23 in 10 days, and my son's 18. And my wife and I, many, many years ago, decided that we were going to be intentional parents, that our job, while we always knew, my wife and I always knew we were together forever. There was never this, we need to work on us. There was just an automatic, we're in this forever and we'll always figure shit out. And knowing that there's never this uncertainty with our relationship. I mean, my wife, for a majority of our marriage, slept in bed alone because I worked midnight shift. So like we never had to have for whatever reason, we never had to have the conversation, are we okay? So we could focus our attention on being a parent. Because I truly believe putting out your next generation, the person that's going to represent your bloodline, who you are, is very important to put out into the world that person that reflects both you and your wife. And we made a decision early on that we were going to be all in as parents, and not hover parents, but that we were going to have a plan. Like there was an intentional parenting style and methodology to what we did in order to create great human beings. And I would bet if you asked your parents, if you asked both your moms and your dad, and was there a plan on how they were going to raise you guys, whether it was as structured in my head as it was in my wife's head, doesn't have to be as organized of thought, but a plan on how we're, with good moral fiber in the church, like all the different things that you put into play at certain key times in their life. I think it's great to see two people that, and knowing both your moms the way that I do, I would lay, if I had money, I would bet on that. They did have a plan that was intentional. And it wasn't just you evolved into this person through osmosis, that there was this driven, focused plan to create you into who you are today. And I would argue that because I know you, Rye, being so anal retentive as you are, and Fran being probably more of an 80-20 guy, like as long as we're in the 80% right category, I'm good. I work off the 50-50. Like I'll just throw shit to the wind and like, I'm willing to take the risk. I might be wrong, but I'm a 50-50 guy. But I think having a partnership where anal retentive Ryan and 80-20 Fran together somewhere meet in that middle and hold each other sort of like a yin and a yang, where you might get lost in the weeds, Rye, a little bit by being too focused on the minutia. And Fran might be like, let's pull back out of that and refocus over to here, can also be a really good dynamic. And then conversely, Fran may be a little bit scattered on certain things, and you may be like, we got to dial it in this area. Do you guys see that working that way, Fran? We'll start with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like what I could say about why me and Ryan's relationship works so well is because one, I think we share, the one thing I always say when people ask about like our dynamic as a whole is we share the same core values, right? Just having a sports mentality background, like it's very like everything needs to be disciplined. It's all about hard work. It's about the grind. It's about having like a schedule. Everything needs to be that way, right? But what I think is really interesting is while we're very similar, like we are very different in some things like that. Like Ryan is very detailed. He understands the in and outs of kind of everything. Whereas what we say is I'm more of like a big picture guy. I'm very like looking forward with, it has its pros and cons, but I think we really work well off each other in that sense. But I think the most important thing is, like I was saying before, we share the same core values. Whether it's talking like with ourselves or our clients, it's always, honesty, transparency, always making sure the most important things we share the same beliefs on. And then we might differ on, how we get there, little details along the way, but overall we have the same goals. We have the same vision on, how we need to get there and how we execute on that, which is, why I think we work so well.
Rye, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And just in life in general, not just business, I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are different than you. So you get different perspectives, you get different backgrounds. I mean, even with me and my wife, like we're very similar in some regards, but we are so polar opposites in other ways, right? That we balance each other out. And me and Fran's business relationship, I think it's really, really the same way. Because especially in our business, when you're dealing with people's money, when you're dealing with people's goals or dreams or aspirations and helping guide them to get there, you need to have the big picture mentality and the client experience stuff that Fran's so good at bringing to the table. But you got to know the numbers too. You got to know the compliance around it. You got to know legally how you can get there and structure those things so you stay on it. So I think that as I've gotten to know Fran, and that wasn't the plan from the beginning, right? When I met Fran and offered him, the opportunity to intern with us when he first came out of college and all that, I just knew he was a good, hardworking kid that had a lot of potential. Like he mentioned, just those same core dynamics that were there. And it's been neat to see our relationship evolve over the years, right, into a real partnership. That I wish I could say that was the plan from day one, right? But it really wasn't. It's kind of evolving. Like, this could be a really nice fit where we each bring a nice set of skills to the table that we could establish and start and grow a business together that could really be top notch and really have a great impact on our network and on the community as well.
Yeah, I love, sometimes some of the best decisions are the ones that it's going to work, but you have no idea how, right? I always go back to Max Out, because while I was an entrepreneur on the less than legal way when I was younger, I was not an entrepreneur. In my head, I wasn't an entrepreneur because I wasn't doing it because I wanted to be a businessman. Like I had my own bodyguarding business, but that was just a byproduct of being a bodyguard through the Maxwells. Like I didn't dream up this idea of starting my own. It just was a natural progression. Starting Max Out was a gigantic risk, because I had, again, I go back to, I don't have a shit ton of money saved or anything like that. We've been, and part of that intentional parenting plan was we were going to sacrifice finances in order to have somebody home every day for our kids. And that was just an intentional decision we made, knowing that the financial security that comes with having two incomes wasn't going to be there. And that's an individual choice everybody makes when they get married and have kids. But for me, I borrowed up, $150,000 from a human being that wanted to be paid back. and I didn't have a way of creating or generating extra income to pay back Jason, my business partner, right? So, and I borrowed it from somebody who I did not really know or like. At the time, Jason and I weren't friends. I borrowed money from him like he was an ATM, and it was just a transaction. And I didn't really have any clue how it was going to work. And all I knew is that when I went to Florida, when the subject who will never be named again, the once third party partner who will never be spoken of,
whom I know
for legal reasons. When I went to Florida and got on Max Out, I did a leg extension and a shoulder press. And I did 12 reps of each. And then I puked. And I said, okay, I don't know what just happened there, but that was insane. I'm in. Because I just knew whatever that was, I've never felt that before and I've never seen it before. So I'm like, if we're going to bring this to the world and we're going to create this thing out of nothing, I like doing that. I like doing the thing no one else has done. I like not following the rules. I like going against the grain. I like pushing back. And that was like the ultimate pushback. And so I like when you were saying how that wasn't part of the plan, but it grew into something even better. And that's kind of what happened with Max Out. Fran, when you decided to, you're a young guy and you're starting a business, your first move pretty much out of college was, hey, I'm going to go start a company. Were you scared of shit or no?
No, of course. So I obviously it makes it a lot easier when you got a guy like Ryan. Like the thing I always say to my buddies when they say, what's Ryan like? Is like, Ryan is like a rock star in that world, right? You meet a lot of people. And for a lot of people who don't understand in the financial services world, it is it's a dog eat dog world. Like only 10% of people survive that get into the business, right? And of those 10%, most are never really successful, right? People might hang around for a little while just because they have a very good network. But, a guy like Ryan, he's smart as shit. He works his ass off. And he knows how to talk to people and make them understand things, where he's such a trustworthy guy that, just coming up in the industry where, in the network I grew up around, like not all people have a ton of money, right? So I know he has that same kind of background. So it's a lot of, hey, you got to be able to talk to people. They need to trust you. So learning from him was, phenomenal. So making that leap, right? A lot of it was like, hey, we're both entrepreneurial guys. We want to have our own company. But a lot of it was that I was like, okay, if there's a guy I would want to go into this kind of company with, it would be Ryan, right? He is the guy he's gonna do all the things right. He's gonna make sure we succeed. At the end of the day, that's the number one goal, right? It's for the business to grow and succeed. So I think anytime you start a business, right, it's gonna be scary, no matter what it is. But I was young, naive too, so I had all the confidence in the world. There was never a time where I really thought, even though I was scared, I was never like, oh, we might fail. It was always like, oh, we're gonna blow it up. So yeah.
And Ryan, I know your backstory in business. Again, we go back to the fact that I launched you. We'll start there. And then 100%. And then when you made your first move into the business world, when football was no longer in your future, and being a max out strength coach clearly wasn't your final destination. And you moved into them. We don't have to talk about specifics, but you went into an industry where you had the luxury and benefit and also learning experiences that sort of helped you sculpt what you really wanted out of your business life, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And I think actually some context with going back, right, would be helpful on that. So, after I played in the Arena League for a couple of years, I got cut. I said, all right, well, no one else wants me to play for them. What do I do now? And that's where I came home and stayed in contact with you and had a great opportunity to come, work with you and Jason and Max Out as I kind of figured out what my next move was. And that's when I did get recruited, right, from one of our mutual clients, right, at Max Out to get into the industry. Right. And truth be told, my initial thought of going in was that I just want to make a lot of money and be successful. Right. I had this guy who would show up in his Ferrari or show up in his Mercedes and like, well, I didn't grow up with a lot of money and he's telling me I can do this. And like Fran said, I'm young, naive, and like, no one's going to work harder than me. And I could figure this out. Like, let's go. Like, what do I need to do to get that? Right. And that's where I got into the industry and really, when I say the industry, specifically in the insurance world, that was there. Never wanted to be in that. I was like, all right, if I can educate people, I can make a lot of money doing it. Like, let's give this a shot and let's go. Right. And as I got into it, I knew I was heading down the right path with that. And to Fran's point, I just knew, hey, this is something I see could be good for me down the road. Let's just get moving. Worst case, I fail. I got no money anyway right now. Like, what do I got to lose? Which was nothing. So like, I'll never forget, my first day there on the job. I was saying, hey, we're going to give you some leads. We're going to call some people. They're going to want to set some appointments with you to go over their insurance options. Right. So I get a script. I get a list of people to call. And I start calling through. I'm like, all right, well, like, how long are we calling for? They're like, just all day. Like, what do you mean all day? Like, just going to call till, you get like 3 appointments. I'm like, all right, call 10 people, maybe get a few people on the phones. Ain't going to take that long. My first day, I called 350 people. 350 people on the phone that day, 12 hours. I didn't book a single appointment that day. I took a step back. I'm like, what the hell did I get myself into? What am I doing? Right. But it's like, all right, I made a commitment to do this. I'm going to start to figure this out. I know I can be good at it. It's just completely outside of the skill set that I could do. I know I could in football run until I puked. I knew I could lift weights. I knew I could do this. I could excel, but this was just something completely different. None of that stuff mattered anymore. So that transition from playing football going into the business world was brutal. Long story short, in that I had a lot of success with that company for the first 4 years of my career. Had a lot of people that were there that really taught me how to excel, right? How to have business practices, how to set up your schedule the right way, how to position, products and services in a certain manner that was there. But at the end of the day, I knew that company wasn't the best long-term solution for me, despite a lot of the things that I learned there and a lot of great people who kind of taught me stuff along the way, because in that company, it was just one company's products that we could offer and one solution that was there that really wasn't in line with the client's best interest, in my opinion. Right. So I said, all right, I want to jump outside of that a little bit and go to a more open architecture platform, right? That we could really kind of put the client's best interest first. Spent another 4 years at another, great company. Got headed down that right direction, but still, it's like, all right, this still isn't quite what I thought it was, but it was an improvement, right, in that area. So when me and Fran decided to, I met Fran, right? Not met Fran, but Fran had an internship with me, and we started to work together and kind of saw all those things that were there, and then decided to launch Opulus in August of 2019. So I think knowing that there was a lot of struggle along the way, there was a lot of pain points that were there, but those, 7 to 8 years of experience that I got from not having a single person want to talk to me right about anything that I was doing, banging my head against the wall. And by the way, I came into the company with 30 people at the same time, right? And after a year, I was the only one left. So it was a brutal experience, right, to get started and cut my teeth there. But I learned so much from each step along the way of what worked, what I liked to do, and what didn't work, and what I didn't like to do, that kind of gave me the experience that I needed to ultimately, launch our own firm, 8 years later, and a lot of stuff along the way.
I think it's important for people to know journeys, right? So
Yeah.
I wrote my life story. And had I not had the chance to relive my life again and put it on the paper, that I wouldn't appreciate every one of those little moments that aren't just individual moments. They're all connected to each other, right? That everything we do in life is connected. There's no randomness to it. And we all make choices, and those choices take us down different paths. But I firmly believe God puts us here on earth with a predestined outcome. And depending on our choices we make along the way, depends on how quickly we get there. But ultimately, I believe our outcome is destined. And I don't believe it's just random, that however you ended up, and you're just a byproduct of your own, destruction. I think that each one of those opportunities that you had coming out of football and getting into the business world, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I don't regret anything in my life. Nothing. Everything I've ever done in my life, good, bad, or ugly, got me to today. And it's part of my journey and helps me make decisions now a lot clearer and more precise, had I not had those negative experiences in my life. So, Fran, as someone who is younger than Ryan, and someone who is relatively new in the adult business world, and your first real big move is to start a company with someone, mentorship is key. And I've loved the fact that I've mentored kids for 30 years, and it's one of my greatest joys, because I get to see Ryans grow up and become successful. Mariah Trawick's or Meg Yates's or Sammy Stippa's or any of these other kids that I've worked with who were all athletes, and not every kid I've ever mentored was an athlete, but a lot of them were, because I could take something that was in you as an athlete, that drive, that inner passion, and really start to harness it and help you understand who you are at that moment, 16, 15 years old, and start to help you control that fire, and use that fire in a way that's productive for you and helps you make decisions that help bring that fire out even more and allows you to grow and build on that. For you, Fran, obviously you've had a lot of the similar coaching components to it, where coaches influenced your life and your family influenced your life. How much has it helped you having someone like Ryan, who had those 8 years of cutting his teeth in the industry world and understanding what works and doesn't work based on his experiences, to help you grow in the role as a partner in Opulus?
Sure. So, I think, like, one thing I want to go back to is, like you mentioned, like mentors. Like, I've had great mentors my entire life, right? I think from a very young age, obviously when my dad passed, I kind of was forced to grow up a little bit, right? Very early, right? At like age 13, I was kind of forced to kind of grow into this, manhood role right away. So naturally I leaned on mentors a lot, right? Whether it was coaches, just people around me, older guys. So I think that's something I've really valued, all along throughout my life, right? So, naturally when I started working with Ryan, like Ryan was a phenomenal mentor, as I was mentioning earlier, but I think the most important thing is that he has experienced things that I haven't, right? So when you go through something for the first time, that can be very stressful for you, that someone else has gone through. It can be very like relieving just to know like, hey, it's going to be okay. For example, I always joke with people. They always say like, what was the scariest part of Opulus? I'll tell you right now, it was March 20th, 2020. The market was absolutely tanking. And on this day, it tanked 10%. The Dow dropped 3,000 points. It was down, the market was down like 40% for the year. I remember I'm sitting there in front of the TV. I'm sitting there like on the ground. My jaw is like on the floor. I'm like getting so stressed out because it was the first time I'd ever gone through a crash rate. And when you're managing people's money, you feel that stress for the clients, right? So, like obviously I'm very stressed. I'm freaking out, but having Ryan there just to be like, yo, it's going to be okay, man. We've been through this. We have a plan. Just having that there is so important, just because without that, you're just like, what the hell is going on here, right? So and that's just the one story I like to tell people, but there's stuff like that all the time, right? It's like, your first time handling, different client situations when people are stressed out about different things. Just having someone to lean on that's been there before is huge just for my own growing, right? Because, naturally there's always going to be a new experience, right? No matter what it is, right? No one's been through everything, right? So just knowing someone that's already been there, they've gotten over that hurdle, they understand how to handle it, how to talk to people, is just super important to have someone to lean on for all that stuff.
Right. What's your thoughts on having someone who's, he's 11 years younger or 9 years younger? I can't do math. Having someone that is leaning on you. Like, what have you learned from someone who is thirsty for knowledge, thirsty to succeed, has the same, in a very not so similar, but kind of similar way when you started out, when you left Max out and went to go work in insurance, how that person sort of took you under his wing and was sort of showing you the ropes, like having that inverse responsibility. How has that affected you as far as your ability to make decisions and having that responsibility of a partner who leans on you?
Yeah, well, especially in regards with our relationship, it was interesting because Fran our last company, Fran interned with me, right? First. So that was a relationship where I was like, hey, just go do this. Okay. You got to prove yourself. Right. And until that, work hard, just do what I tell you to do, and you'll get there. Trust me. So after Fran proved that, and listen, through the last two companies we worked with, I probably worked with 100 different advisors, 100 different agents, and Fran is the hardest working person and one of the most open-minded people of just taking coaching and feedback. Right. So when we were exploring, or the thought of starting our own business kind of came up and I approached Fran with it, is really because he earned that right, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Through the hard work, the energy, the effort that he brought in. So then when it went from me telling him what to do to a partnership, it's been a fun journey, and we all had that coach or that manager that we absolutely love and we'd love to emulate, but also that coach or that manager, that boss that we just couldn't stand either. And they got it all wrong, right? From our perspective. So it's been interesting trying to figure that out and balance it. And as our relationship grows of mentoring Fran and trying to help guide him along the way to expedite his growth, which has got so much potential. And I can't wait to see, where his career takes him, right? Being, years younger than I am, I hope he crushes the milestones that I've hit so that he can do bigger and better, with us at his age stone markers that I've hit. But it's been fun, and it's been a big responsibility too. So to Fran's point, when everything looked like it was falling, by the way, we launched Opulus, and then 5 months later, 6 months later, pandemic hit.
Right.
Right. Financials is not the best, the best spot to be in during the pandemic when everything's closed and shut down and no one's making money and businesses are closing. So, that was an interesting time to try to coach, not just our clients, right? Not just coach myself, but coach a guy that I really, care about, that has so much potential to keep the wheels on this thing as we're getting launched, to continue to propel that, that forward. And obviously we're still here. We figured it out, we made it, and, we can get into it maybe later, but we're really thriving right now from our perspective of where we could be. But it's a big responsibility and something I take seriously, and something that I've reached out to my own mentors on to say, hey, how can I get better? Not just as an individual, but as, someone that wants to see, a guy like Fran really excel and succeed and do better than I could have ever done.
I think one of the things that I look at both of you and I see, and you're right, opening a business 5 months before a pandemic, and we opened Max out during a recession. So
yeah,
that was like, wasn't the smartest play, but, and we were in a luxury business like you are. I mean, you have to have money to invest in order to invest money. And people needed to have, $150, $200 a month to put into personal training in order to get personal training. Yep. So I understand the risk of where you were as far as how the world was when you started your business. And if you have, and there's something to say about, and there's a fine line between cocky and confident, right? There's a very fine line, and I teeter on it. And I think we all do as competitors, as people who are confident in our talents and our abilities, and have the inward knowledge of what those are. And also are things we're not that good at, right? Knowing who you're not is almost as important as knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And I think having the backgrounds that both of you have in athletics, in the way you were brought up by your families, and the people and the impacts that those people had in your life, prepared you well to withstand 5 months into your entrepreneurial endeavor, the worst pandemic. Well, I wouldn't even say the worst pandemic, the worst shitstorm that was 2020 to have happened in my 50 years on this earth. So I think having each other's background, the things that are very similar, but also having your background, Ryan, in the business world, probably kept you moving forward through a period of time where forward wasn't always visible. Fran, when you thought of, and it's a good point to transition to, when you were saying on March 20th, who was the first person you sought guidance from on how to, and I always say, my job as a cop is I have a 5-minute window to unfuck your problem, right? That's what they give me. And within 5 minutes, if I haven't unfucked it, we're all screwed, right? And then their expectation is it's got to be fixed too. So who's the first person you called when you were like, oh shit, this just happened, we're fucked, right?
Well, naturally, just for the business, I mean, it was me and Ryan every day, and this wasn't March 20th was like the worst day. It was like a full 2 weeks of just every day. It was like, I mean, you guys remember March, it was like a total disaster. Like, we had the Maxwell event, and that was like the last weekend of, that was March 6th. That was the last weekend of things were open per se. Then that next Monday hit, and then it was just everything crashed. Obviously I was there with Ryan, but I was calling, my best friend Chris, I talked to him about like everything. So he's just like, what do you guys think? I'm like, dude, I don't even know. I'm like, this is crazy. So I think everyone was kind of in that same boat of not really sure, what was going on. But I think it was just such a shitstorm, like as you described it, that I think we were just, I know Ryan was much more level-headed than I was. I was like, we just started this business. Market's down 40%. What the hell is going on? But after talking with Ryan, obviously I knew things were going to be okay, and we had to relay that to our clients and convey that message. And like I said, it's just about experience and going through that the first time. Where I think people that had been through the 2008 financial crisis, for them it was just kind of like, okay, it's bad, but we've been here. We're the United States. We're going to turn it around. We're going to make things okay. And it's like anything else in life. It's about going through something, understanding it, and then being ready for the next one, knowing, hey, here's how we handle this. Here's how we get back to good as soon as possible.
I'm going to ask this question not in a political way, but the realities is that the stock market is very volatile when there's change in politics, changes in direction of the country, relationships internationally. Like there's so many variables that impact the way the stock market works and the financial industry works. How do you guys, by staying apolitical here, how do you manage that with your clients so that they understand without worrying about the politics?
Sure.
The plan, so to speak. Right.
Yeah. Here's the detail side of me. This is not investment advice, so please consult your advisor directly. So I'll start with that. So here's what I think: whether you're independent, you're a Democrat, you're Republican, you always think you're right. So our Republican clients are terrified of a Democratic leadership. Democrats were terrified of Republican leadership, right? That just left. And I think most independents are just like, what the hell is going on? I hope we're okay.
Right.
Right. So I think when we look back and to Fran's point about the market crashing, I think one of my strengths and also my weakness, depending on if you talk to my wife about this, is that I am just not emotional at all. I'm just very fact driven. Let's look at history. Let's look at the facts and what's going to happen going forward, especially in the financial, realm of things, specifically, I should say. So there's always going to be a crisis, right? You got 9/11, you got the housing market crash of 2008. You go back a little bit further, you got the tech bubble, you got Black Monday in 1987, and the pandemic. So something's always going to happen. And if you look at things historically, if you can make the determination that the US is going to be around, right? And then we're going to have free markets and we're going to have innovation and we're going to have the ability to grow and thrive, then there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad, right? It's just a season that we're in to come out on the other side. So that's where, I think Fran's strength comes into play, is if we can look at the global picture and know that just what we're getting through right now, what we're going through is going to be tough, could be tough. Listen, the market's at a high today, right? When we got on and took a look at it, it's not going to stay there. It's going to go down a little bit, probably going to go up a little bit. And over time, right, if everything's aligned and you understand your goals and your values, in my opinion, everything's going to be just fine. But if we look at certain segments of time, they're going to be brutal, right? Just like it was for the Kansas City Chiefs last night. It was absolutely brutal, right? But it's just that was one game and it's just one period of time. So, in my opinion, when we look at the future, as long as your goals are aligned with things, you're going to get there. It's just a matter of what help do you need to navigate that, the good times and the bad. Because anyone who tells you, hey, it's just going to go up, and everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be good, we're not going to have any challenges, they're full of shit. Right? It's about managing expectations and guiding, things there.
How real is the Dow Jones number? Like like I said, I have no investments other than my pension. And when you see like 30,000 it hits for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Like what is the reality of that when you're watching those numbers? And granted, Trump built it up to whatever it was, 28 or 29,000 before it crashed. And then it went down to 24, I think, or something like that, 23. And then now it's back up 30. What does that mean in the financial world to a non-financial guy? Like, what am I seeing there? What does that mean?
Yeah. So, ultimately, whether you look at the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 1000, they're just cumulative, what they call benchmarks or indicators on how the largest 500 companies, for example, in the S&P 500 are doing. Right. So it's kind of weird right now. We're in a weird time because everyone's really just kind of taking their best guess, right, about where things are going to be a year from now, assuming the vaccine is good, assuming that stimulus puts back in. So, small businesses can stay open, right, and continue to thrive. But to make it simpler, to your point, Matt, is you look at Apple, for example. And again, this isn't investment advice, but just an example. At the beginning of the year, Apple's projections for their business and their profits were off the charts like they always were, right? They're coming out with new products, new services, things are going, great for them. Well, the pandemic hit and now Apple has to close all their stores, right? Apple can't make the chips for their computers that they used to because of restrictions on import of supplies and all this other good stuff. So Apple dropped 30%. Right? 40% even at one point that was there. So, when you look at that, that's kind of what you saw in the market came. Companies were valued less because they weren't open. They couldn't make their products. So naturally, they're not as valuable as they used to be. Well, as soon as things kind of settled in, there was news of the vaccine, there was news of stimulus and things opening back up. Well, what happened to Apple stock? Shot up through the roof. It was up like 70 or 80% last year. Because they reopened, they were back on point with their projections, and now they can begin to do business again. So, when the stock market is at all-time highs, it's not an indicator of how small businesses are doing today, how your family or my family is doing today, but it's an indicator of where is the value of companies like Apple going to be a year from now, right? And I think if you just ask most people, is Apple going to be in business next year? Probably. Are they going to grow their revenue? Probably. Are they going to have another $300 billion in their bank account? Probably. Right. So that's the thing that we're talking through a lot of our clients right now is we're living in two different worlds. We're living in the world of Apple, the Amazons, where their values are going to continue to grow because they got the power to do so. And then we're living in a different world where people are struggling to pay their bills, right? And put food on the table and it's just not a good indicator of that, right? So I might have got a little too granular there, but that's
that's exactly what I was. Because for me, I look at things from a because I don't invest, because I have my pension. My pension's a protected investment through our pension fund, and I've always just said that's I plan on working until I die. So I'm not going to be the guy that's looking to sit on an island and drink Mai Tais and watch my stock market portfolio grow. But for someone who does have money invested, understanding how that, even if your personal situation isn't ideal at the moment because of all the things that are happening with COVID and all that, understanding that if you do have money invested, and I don't know enough about investments, but I would assume that the safe investments are putting money into places like Google and Amazon and things like that have a proven track record and a value of sticking around, like you were talking about, going forward. That you'd probably vary it in different little. This might put a little bit here and a little bit there, but there's always that. If you're investing with somebody, there's always the plan that you're going to put some of that money in places like an Apple. And understanding how that the S&P or the Dow or the NASDAQ works and those skyrockets and drops in the grand scheme of things is important. And I think knowing that you have those granular skills is great, because it's gonna take somebody like me who's an idiot and really just sort of make it a little bit more clearer, because I needed to hear that. I don't know. I honestly didn't know the answer to that question. Now, Fran, when you're dealing with clients, what do you feel your best asset with them to get them to stay the course or make some adjustments if you feel adjustments are made? How do you get your clients to buy in, kind of like a coach would with a team? How do you get them to buy in on what you're doing?
Well, I think the two most important things are just, transparency and education, right? Like Ryan was just talking about. I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there that we actually had a post about a couple months ago is just that I think, there's not enough education out there that people know what's going on, right? They see what's going on with the stock market and they're like, how is that real? The economy is like terrible right now. Everything's shut down. They just don't understand that they're not one and the same. And they work entirely different ways. But, that's just one of the things that we try to focus on, at Opulus is education. We write a blog, we put posts out, we put videos out every single week trying to explain, your everyday stuff relating to finance, to try to educate people so that people really understand this stuff. Because we think, it's so important to know what's going on in these worlds, because the quicker you know what's going on, the better you can be, and you can better your own financial situation. But getting back to your question, I think it all comes down to, like I said, there's two things: honesty and education, right? One of the most important things is that you don't overpromise. You don't promise things that you can't deliver, and just always telling people, hey, things are not always going to be great, right? The stock market's, like as Ryan said, it's at an all-time high today. It's probably not going to be a couple months from now. So as long as you're setting reasonable expectations with people and always telling them, hey, sometimes times are going to be good, sometimes times are going to be bad, but we're going to get through it. And as long as we're trying to smooth out that road to get you to your goals, so it's not extremely volatile, then that's all we're trying to do here. And then just educating them along the way, right? Taking people through those experiences that I've been through, making sure they understand, hey, things are going to be okay at the end of the day. We just got to get through it. We got to stay the course. We have a plan. We just got to make sure we stick to that and make adjustments if necessary.
So now the tie-in next is this podcast you guys decided to start, which having been in podcasting now for 2.5 years coming up, I can tell you that podcasting is one of the greatest joys that I have. I truly do enjoy having conversations with people, bringing different stories to the world, just sort of populating the world with stories of positivity or greatness or epic lives or whatever the theme is for each show. What is the plan? What was the genesis of the podcast, and what are your goals with it? Because I know you're both goal oriented, so I'm sure you've thought this out.
Yeah.
What are your goals with the podcast? Ryan, I'll go to you first.
Actually, if you don't mind, Fran, why don't you lead on this? Because the podcast was your idea, and kind of you came up with it. So why don't you lead off on this one? I'll start.
I'm the host. Please do not, Ryan, steal my host ship. You literally did a host thing right there, which is great. I'll let you have it. Christ, I started your career. Fran, go ahead.
Appreciate you. My bad.
Sure. So I think like one of the things that is really interesting about us in general that I think we're very good at is we're a wealth management and financial planning firm, but we're very good at marketing, right? If you look at our page, everything we are kind of like we're trying to become like a content machine almost, right? Where we're giving out free education. Now we're coming up with the podcast. We want our names to be out there as much as possible for people, which I don't know how many financial companies that people know about or follow, but there's no one out there that's doing the things that we're doing. It's you will not find it anywhere. So what we're really trying to do is we're trying to create as many avenues as possible for people to get that free education. The goal with the podcast, we played around with a few different ideas, right? We were like, oh, do we want to start a YouTube page? But essentially the idea was, we post these like minute videos, these educational videos, but it's kind of hard to, everyone has different levels of knowledge, right? So you never know, hey, is this too complex for people? Is it too simple? Like it's really hard to gauge without understanding, okay, what is our audience looking for? So what we wanted to do was accomplish two things, right? We wanted to do some form of a longer video podcast style thing to really, get people to know us better, understand who we are, understand what we're trying to do with people. And secondly, we just knew that, similar to you, we are so fortunate to have such a great network of, business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, athletes. We know all these people that have awesome stories, right? So we were like, what's a way that we can help not only, promote ourselves, but mostly promote all these people that we know and help get their stories out, help their businesses grow. So the idea kind of has evolved in a couple different ways, but I think that's one of our main goals right now is to just, help people understand who we are, understand all the people that, we're lucky to work with, and just tell the stories of all the people that we're fortunate enough to know, and help people that, people maybe it's a very common thing right now that everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to own their own business. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of people don't understand, all the things that go into that. So for anyone that's nervous about making that jump, I think one of our goals is for people to hear about, all the highs and lows along the way, all the things that they need to be aware of if they are going to make that jump. So I think the podcast I think it's going to be an awesome thing. I think people are going to learn a lot from it. And it's fun too, right? We love it. We love getting to talk to people just like you know what I mean? Getting to share the stories. We know all these incredible people. So I think it's going to evolve naturally. Like I'm sure this show has evolved since you first started it. But yeah, I think we're at a good starting point.
What's the name of the podcast so we can get that out there? And for everybody, I'll put it in the show notes and all that stuff, the website, everything you need to reach these two knuckleheads. That'll be out on everything.
It is called Inside the Path to Success.
I like it. Now, what is is it a conversational style podcast, or is it do you have like, I've been a guest on 100 different podcasts.
Sure.
Also hosted now 97 episodes of this podcast. I've been on ones where there's an agenda, almost like the questions are written out ahead of time, and they want to get through, the host wants to get through that agenda. Or then you have the complete opposite, which is me, which has a zero fucking plan. I ask one question and just figure it the fuck out from there. So that's, when you ask if mine has evolved, it really hasn't evolved. My talent to do it has evolved, but the plan has never changed. It's pretty much still throw shit against the wall, see what sticks. So
yeah.
Ryan, what's the structure of the show?
Somewhere between those two. Right. So since we're just getting started, if we're somewhere between, we just want to get someone's message out to the world. Right. So knowing the person ahead of time, we got some questions that, most people want to know. And that's really, to piggyback on Fran's point, that's really why we started. Questions we get from our clients a lot is, well, what are other people doing? How are other people doing it? Me and Fran can't work with everybody. Right. So we got an abundance mentality. Is there's not enough hours in a day for us to work with every single person out there. So this is our way to give stuff away for free. So people that we can't work with, or people that want to know how other people are doing it, can glean from other people's experience. And we'll talk about money, we talk about finances, but it's more so, how people overcame challenges to get to where they're getting at today. We'll talk a little money, business, finances along the way, but it's more so about overcoming, the challenges that are there. But, ultimately we want to go through what people would tell their younger selves, right? Knowing what they know today and how they overcame some of those challenges and what they have next, right, on their path, with the hope of motivating and inspiring, people to make that jump, make that leap, or improve themselves and improve their situation, to hear how other people did it. So it's almost like a mentorship podcast in a way, to give the inside scoop and the behind the scenes look at where people are at. Because I think too often we look at athletes or business owners or whoever it might be and be like, man, if I could just be that guy, right? Or if I could just be in that position, or if I had the cards fall the right way for me. And rarely is that the story, right? The story is a lot of hard work, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of challenges. And if we can, pay that forward by having people share their stories, that's ultimately what we're looking to get out of the podcast.
I think it's a great idea. I think the world needs more, to piggyback on Fran multiple times, said transparency and honesty, and having those two qualities come through the screen or the audio podcast is ultimately where, I've listened to, I was never a podcast guy, first of all, and I really still am not, but I will listen to people that I want to see how they do their craft, and then critically judge them. Like, everybody's judging me, and they may not tell me they are, but they are. And I critically judge others to determine whether or not I find authenticity in what they're saying, or does it sound contrived, or is it, a lot of shtick, or, whatever. I like, as a host, measuring myself, because I'm a competitor, against everyone else. And the best. So once you get into this and you get your iTunes and you get ratings and reviews, and one of the reviews I got, and I don't even know who the person was, and the review was, he's no Joe Rogan, but give him time.
Pretty good.
I'm like, I'll take that. Like,
yeah.
And the best compliment I ever got was from a gay guy on an airplane when I was an air marshal, a gay flight attendant. We were on a delay, so we would pre-board the flight, and because we had to brief the crew and all that kind of stuff, but which was stupid in and of itself. But we're sitting there, we're on like a 2-hour delay, and no passengers on, so we're just sitting there talking with the crew, and he's like, I know you're probably straight, right? I said, yes, very straight. And he goes, I just want you to know that you are a beautiful bald man. I said, I'll fucking take it. I don't think I've ever been called that ever. And the fact that a guy thinks I'm that, I'm in. Like, I was on cloud 9 for the rest of the day, right?
Love it.
So being judged is part of this process, just like you're judged every day as a husband and a father, and as a business owner, and as how well you do with someone else's money. This podcast, you're going to be judged by. And I think, knowing both of you the way I do, you're both going to be very successful because you don't have bullshit in.
Thank you.
Like it's not in your DNA. So there's no, there would be no inclination to bullshit. And then if you did, you would quickly know that you were, and the other person was like, dude, what the fuck was that? That was complete bullshit. Like, don't do that ever again. Right. So I think when you, and I'll help you with whatever I can with podcasting, just tips on how to get yourself on all the different platforms and how to really grow what you're trying to do. And having been shut down from social media because of politics, I can tell you that social media was a really big part of my podcasting exposure. So finding new ways and having to pivot is what I've been doing. And I'll say Kurt Schilling helped me out a lot with, and he's been a guest on my show a couple of times. He's on this thing called haps.tv and HAPPS.tv. And you can simulcast on all your social media from there and do live shows. And I don't know if you're planning on doing lives. I love lives because I love the challenge of doing it one cut, right? So lives is really where I feed off of that environment. But that's a new thing for me now, because now I used to do lives a lot on Facebook, and I didn't really do the podcast live, but I had like a separate brand of podcasting, which I was more in the political, social world realm, talking about the current events. And I would do those a couple times a week. And those were helping build the 2 Dates and a Dash group up as well. So there was always an interconnectivity. So I think when you guys do your 1 minute videos on like Instagram or all the other things on all your social media platforms, the tie-in between those to the podcast, to the, if you do a webinar or like all those things are going to end up becoming interconnected, and one will be the same, and people will get that information. They may have heard it through the podcast about the webinar, or the webinar they might have heard about the podcast or whatever. So I think the fact that you're not going to be just a money-driven centric podcast is brilliant. I think your network is your net worth. We've all heard that, right? So, and our networks are very big through the Maxwell Football Club and through just your coaching and playing careers. And I think sharing those stories, like a Colin Thompson, right? Nobody would have guessed his story, right? And he's about ready to make the Giants, and he gets appendicitis and has to have an emergency appendectomy and then gets cut. And like, that's just the nature. Nobody would think that's so cruel. How could they do that? Well, it's the NFL, right? So like, just people wouldn't understand that don't have an understanding of people's, there's not always going to be that freak athlete who just naturally became an NFL star, right? There's more Fran Walshes and Ryan Greisers and Colin Thompsons in the NFL than there are DeAndre Hopkins, right? So there just are.
Definitely true.
Those people are stories. And the more we can share stories with people who don't necessarily have it, and it's amazing how unaware the general population is of the world to most things. I'm sure you see that in money. I'm unaware about money, and I shouldn't be, because I own a business, but I'm the get shit done guy, right? So that's my role. I get shit done. And Jason's the money guy. He understands all the financial parts, and I probably could. I just don't have an interest. But I'm unaware. And I think with your podcast, and I think it's really important that as you are doing this, understanding how to leverage that and as an evergreen piece, as part of your brand, as part of Opulus, as part of how you can grow your paid side of your business, right? Because this is a free service you're offering. The more people that can hear your voice, and Fran, you talked about it as a marketing, when I was going to run for office, my marketing strategy, which is basically a campaign strategy, right? Campaigning is marketing. And everybody does the same shit over and over again, right? Campaigns are always the same. We're going to get door knockers. We're going to get yard signs. We're going to do billboards. We're going to do some stupid ass commercial that makes nobody cares about. We're just going to be slamming somebody else and looking like a petty little dipshit. And that's what politics is. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm doing something different. And had I actually stayed in the race and been the endorsed candidate, I had Kurt Schilling, Vince Papale, Ron Jaworski, and someone who I can't say her name, but she was going to come and do it, but she wasn't allowed to do it at the time, but now she could. I was going to do 4 charity dinners. I was going to raise $100,000 for local nonprofits in my district who help the community, food banks, educational nonprofits that help kids that are struggling in school, or the ones that provide lunches for the kids that can't afford, or whatever. I was going to raise $100,000 and then have the news cover it. Because who wouldn't want to vote for the guy that is raising, physically actually changing his community by raising $100,000, and not by one yard sign, not have one door knocker, not one billboard, and not one stupid commercial where I'm slamming anybody. But that's marketing. And what you guys are doing is literally just marketing yourselves in a way that makes you trustworthy, right? Because people will see you as actual people having a conversation. Like, everybody loves this type of podcast, especially when you do audio and video, because they feel like they're sitting like at the end of the bar and they're listening in on the table behind them, have a conversation, and they can't take their ears off of it or their eyes off of it, right? So that's what podcasting does for the world.
Yeah. And Matt, I'll say this too. I think, one of the things that me and Fran envisioned when we launched Opulus is since we own our own firm, we don't have any sales quotas. We don't have an executive sitting in New York or Chicago that says, hey, you got to bring X amount of new clients in, right, each year, which what that is allowing us to do is say, hey, listen, we're going to put our knowledge, our thoughts out to the world, and our stories and our client stories and our network stories. And if you can just use that and run with it and do it on your own, good, go be better for it, right? But if you want help and you know that you want that, but you don't want to do it yourself and you want to hire us, cool. It allows people to raise their hand and say, hey, are we a good fit? But since we don't have quotas to hit, it's more of a natural relationship that we can build and have this organically grow over time, right?
I think it's such should be this norm, right? Like
which is not.
It's not. And I tell people all the time when I mentor people, especially in very rare times that I mentor adults, like, my goal is to have you not need me. Like, you're paying me, I get it, but like, I don't, on my paid mentoring side, like, I get you, I like getting paid, but ultimately I want you to be like, I got this. And I'm just there for like a phone call or a text, and I'm just there to support you, but you don't need me. And I think in your world, if you can have that same level of approach to go, listen, I'm always going to be here for you, but my goal is to have you to where you're confident enough to handle shit. Like, you can figure stuff out. And when I do my, and you were talking about, you can't talk to every single client and be exactly the way you need to be with every single person. When I did my lives on the politics side, people were calling. I was literally getting 250, 300 messages a day on Facebook saying, what the fuck's going on in the world? What are we doing? Are we screwed? Are we going to be socialists? Is communism coming? China, Russia, like, what's happening? And those lives were my way of answering all of those questions for everybody at the same time, rather than individually responding to 250 messages, which was impossible. I created an opportunity for people to get all the information they needed based on all the questions I was getting. I was reading every one of them. I just knew, okay, well, apparently I need to do a live. It's time to go out and answer some questions. And I think that's kind of what you guys are doing in the financial relationship building way.
Yeah. And I think, kind of like similar to what you were just talking about, right? The reason we're proactively out there, like, making these videos, right, is because we know, naturally people tend to be very tight to the chest when it comes to their finances, right? People are not just going to go, comment like, or DM us like, hey, what should I do here? Or, hey, I'm really struggling here. Or, hey, I'm in tons of credit card debt. What should I do? So what we try to do is we try to say, like, hey, here's the questions and issues we always see. Here's just some basic education and things you should be considering. So that way we know that there's those people out there that are probably scared to reach out, or they're embarrassed about one thing or another. So we're just trying to get that help out there so that, like, hey, you don't have to reach out to us until the time's right for you, but here's some stuff to help you along the way. So that's kind of our goal with that stuff.
I love it, guys. We've been doing it. This is now I think we're at an hour and a half now, somewhere around there. So we were cruising on through, and I just looked down the clock. I'm like, well, shit, that went by fast. I hope everybody that's listening today, first of all, thank you for always listening to the Two Dates in the Dash podcast. And I hope that the guests that I bring on are diversified and give you value. And that's really, whether it's an emotional value or a perspective value. I think everybody I've ever had on this show brought something different and unique to that particular episode. And personally, for me, having two friends of mine and people that I truly admire and I truly root for all the time, and I'm always there to support, having them on the show has been important to me, because I want, if I have any way of helping them grow with my network, that's my goal. And that's what guys like Fran and Ryan are doing for the next generation coming up, and helping to build their business up so that when they hire new, young, green, eager, hungry guys that want to be like they were when they were 24, that they help them grow and become successful and start their own firms. And I can absolutely say that that's probably where you're both coming from. And when you think about the growth of Opulus, is that you want to inspire others to have the same intestinal fortitude and passion to go out onto their own and make their own mark in the world. And am I safe to say that, Ryan?
Yeah, no doubt, right? Because I think in the investment management, financial planning world, it's a mess, right? I know a lot of people that we talk to have had really bad experiences, right, with their current advisors, with their previous advisors, or with, some of the big companies that are out there. And we're looking to be one of those guys in the next generation that can blaze this new trail of honesty, of transparency, and real value, right, while minimizing conflicts of interest and not paying a big corporation right along the way. So you're 100% right.
Fran?
Yeah, no, I second everything Ryan said. We're trying to be we're really trying to change the way that people look at financial services in all aspects of the things we do. So, everything we're doing is going to be a little bit different than what people are used to, but we think it's a good way, and we're hoping to, inspire the next generation of planners, to be more holistic, provide real value to people, and really change the way people look at the financial services industry.
Love it. Guys, hang tight. We'll talk offline. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great episode. It was longer than typical, but I don't think there was a dull moment throughout the entire thing. I was engaged the entire time, and I've had way too many conversations with both of these guys. So typically I check out after like 10 minutes because the mouth was still moving, but we didn't. I was all in the whole time, which is great. No, I love you both. And I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, if you want to learn more about me, go to mattcubbler.com, learn more about my life story. You can buy a copy of the book, A Brother's Love and Memoir. If you want to go to the podcast, please subscribe, hit the automatic download button. And please, where can they find your podcast at, Ryan?
Yeah, so our website's opulus.us. That's opulus.us. You can follow us on Instagram at Opulus LLC. And same thing, our podcasts are on all the major download sites, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, you can find us on there. So it's Inside the Path to Success podcast.
Perfect. Everybody, thank you very much. God bless. Go out and be kind to one another.